What's up, Loft students? Welcome back to another week of home groups. I have a couple announcements for us before we get started. First, November 14th, next Sunday, we're going to have Loft Live here, going through our series called that we're starting tonight. We're going to be having a game night for this event, and so your different groups are going to be having different games that we're going to play, and so we're going to have a fun time playing different board games, different stuff going around. So you want to be here next week, November 14th, because also we're going to be starting Humans versus Zombies for real this time. And so we had to postpone it a little bit, but we're going to kickstart it back November 14th. So you want to be present if you want to play, so that way we can get you guys all involved. Lastly, we next summer are taking a trip to Alaska, and so if you are interested in coming on a mission trip to Alaska in July of next year, we're having an interest meeting December 1st here at the Loft at 6 p.m. It's a Wednesday evening. Make sure your parent comes with you so that way you can get all the information you need to know about our Alaska trip. We are really excited for this one and have some cool things planned. So be sure to be here next week and then join us for Alaska next summer. But that's all I have today. Enjoy your home groups. Hey everybody, welcome back to Home Groups. If I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, my name is Scarlett Elsick and I am the Associate Student Pastor here at First Baptist. And so if I haven't gotten to meet you in person, I now get to meet you through a screen. So welcome. I'm so excited to dive in our new series that we are starting today called. And so we're going to be looking at the lives of Jonah and Habakkuk as prophets and seeing the response to the Lord. And so you can go ahead and pull out your Bible and turn to Jonah chapter 1, and we're going to get there in a little bit. For me, during my college years in the summers, I would go out to Portland, Oregon. And so I'd spend the summer there and it was super sweet. And I don't know if you've ever been out west during the summer, but it's like perfect weather. The sun is always shining. There really isn't much rain during that time, and it's not blazing hot like it is in Texas. And so y'all know what that's like. And so while I was there, we decided to go out to the coast one day. And the coast is a little bit different than what we experience here. There's a lot of trees and rocks and things like that. So it's really a fun time. And so we're like, let's go out one evening and watch the sunset and just enjoy the coast and maybe see some whales, do some cool things, whatever it is. So I get dressed in my shorts and my t-shirt, I'm wearing my Birkenstocks, and we head out towards the coast. And so we're driving an hour there, and you're kind of going through these mountains to get there. So it's a lot of forestry, a lot of tall trees, and you finally turn this curve and you see this coastline, and it is gorgeous. Like, it literally looks like heaven is touching earth because the sea is shining, the sun is just glowing. It is absolutely perfect. And so we go all the way down, and we lay out our blankets and we're sitting there, and I'm just basking in like how beautiful it is. And one of my friends, she's sitting next to me, and she's a photographer, and she's like, Scarlett, there is this place not far from here, and it's actually the furthest point on the West Coast. And so we can go all the way towards the end and actually be on the furthest tip on this side of America to be out in the ocean. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. But I was like, I thought we were coming to the beach. She's like, no, but we should really do this. It could really make for a good photo. And so I was like, okay, sure. And she's like, it's just a little trail. We'll get there. And I was like, all right, that sounds fun. So even though I did not suit up for a trail that day, here we are tracking through this forest. She's in flip-flops, I'm in shorts, I'm wearing Birkenstocks, and we are making our way through to try to get to this point. And so here we're going through, and we're walking about 15 minutes at this point, and we see these two people who are in like full-on hiking gear. And so they are decked out, and I'm like, where are they coming from? She goes, oh, they probably just went on another trail. Like, it's fine. And so I was like, okay. So we keep going, and we're like, keep in mind, we're going through trees. We're ducking under things. We're walking through all the things to try to get to this point. And we hit a sign that says the point is going to be 3 more miles. And so I was like, Gabby, we got to turn around. There is no way we can make it this far. And so she's like, no, we're already there. Let's just keep going. And so sure enough, we finally get to that point. And I mean, it is beautiful. Like, you can see everything. It's like a full 180 scale. But as we're looking out, we are watching the sun go down. So we just hiked over 3 miles to get to this point. We are not prepared with anything. The sun is now going down. It is getting dark. And this forest is known for bears. So we start backtracking back, and we are now booking it. And so the sun just happened to go down a lot quicker than what we were anticipating. It is now pitch black. We have kind of an iPhone flashlight. What I mean by that, it's cracked. So we have barely any light to guide us there, and we are trying to map our way out. And so we hit a point where there's a fork in the road, and I'm like, no, we need to go this way because I think I remember us coming this way. And she's like, no, we need to go this way. And so I start running the other way, and she's following me, and I go head first in a pile of mud. And so now, not only am I in the middle of this random forest wearing shorts, Birkenstocks, not dressed for any of this, there's bears somewhere around here, but I'm now in a puddle of mud. And so she falls right after me. And here we are just laying in this mud pile. And part of us has to laugh because of just how ridiculous this scenario is. But it is now pitch black. We have no idea how to get out. We're in this mud pile and we are just stuck. And so here, I'm in the middle of this place that I did not want to be in the first place, and I have no idea how to get myself out. And if we're honest with ourselves, are there things in our life right now that has put us in a place where God does not want us to be in? Maybe you have taken a couple steps down the wrong path that you never intended to be on. Maybe it's some things that you have watched in your past or watching right now. Maybe it's certain friends that you have started to be making. Maybe it's been the way that you treat your family. But whatever it is, you are so distant from God and God's people, and you don't want to listen to any direction. You don't want to do anybody else's thing, but you're stuck. You're almost like in your own mud pile, stuck from all the things that you have found yourself in. And so in starting this new series, we're going to be going to look at the lives of Jonah and Habakkuk, who are prophets after God. And we're going to be looking at their responses specifically to the Lord as he is calling them to the ministry that he has. And so we're going to be in Jonah 1, but let me first explain what a prophet is. Because at first I had no idea what a prophet was, but this was someone that God had chosen and showed up to them and said, hey, I want you to be a messenger for me to this specific group of people. And the whole purpose of that was that people group would come back to God. It was all about building a relationship and coming back to this relationship with the Lord. And so around 750 BC, God shows up to our man Jonah that we're about to read, and he says this in verse 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. So some backstory here, the Ninevites, where this is located is like modern day Iraq. So think of like a Middle Eastern area. And so the Lord says, Jonah, I want you to go to basically this people group that is known to be pretty evil. And Jonah is like, no way, Jose. He's like, I'm going to head out to go to Spain, which is where this Tarshish area is at the time. And so he tries to get on this boat. He was like, I'm going to get out of town. But basically he's like, Lord, I know you told me to do this, but no. And he starts running. And so a lot of us, even as I say just the beginning part of the story, we go ahead and check out and say, come on, Jonah, why don't you just listen to the Lord? Why don't you go do what he asked you to do? But see, Jonah knew it would probably cost him his life. See, the Ninevites and where Nineveh was the capital of Syria. This people and this nation was the most barbaric nation ever. And I don't want to get into too much of the details of things that they would do to people because it was pretty gruesome. But they were known for being murderers. They were known for going out in the ways that they would kill people, kill other nations. And see, most of us are scared to talk about Jesus in our hallway, but Jonah, I'm pretty sure he would take that over going out to the Ninevites because he's like, if I go to them, I'm probably gonna die. And so he's like, I don't think so. And he boards a ship, he heads out, he takes off. And so even though God calls him, he's basically like, no, God, there's no way I'm doing that for you. And we remove ourselves from the story at this point because it's like, well, the Lord's not calling me to the Ninevites. He's not calling me to this other country or this other person. And so we think we're nothing like Jonah in this story because we're not called to go do something that may seem this extreme. But what running looks like for Jonah in this moment looks just the same for us. And that's disobedience. Anytime we say no to God and his word, we are disobeying him. And listen, there's immediate disobedient moments and there's delayed disobedient moments, but it's still disobedience. And there may be immediate disobedience in your life where you're like, no, I know I'm saying directly no to the Lord and what he has for me right now. Like maybe the person you are with right now or dating, you know that you're not supposed to be with. Maybe other people have told you, hey, y'all should probably break up or this relationship is not healthy. But you're too scared of being alone and you don't want to break up with him, even though you know that they are not a godly person. Or you know about that comment or that gossip that you shared about that girl or guy in your class or maybe on TikTok or wherever it was degrading to their character, even though God has told you to look at people made in the image of him. Or maybe you know in your heart the things that you have watched and seen online are not pure, even though the Lord has called you to purity. There are things in our life that we have said directly no to the Lord, even though when he has told us specifically the way that we should live. Or maybe we have delayed obedience. So this is where it's like, I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I'll get to it one day. Like maybe eventually, like I'll stop partying, I'll stop drinking, I'll stop watching stuff online. Maybe I'll stop cheating on my math homework once I pass this class because I really need a good grade for the sport that I'm in. Or maybe you have this reoccurring anger in your heart or bitterness towards this person. You're like, one day, maybe I'll forgive them. But you don't want to give up any of those things right now because you actually enjoy living in it. This is still disobedience. This is still running from God. And some of these things, it's this slow drift of disobedience where it may not be this moment where like the heavens open up and it's like, Scarlett, you're being disobedient right now. Sometimes it may be. But most of the time, it's just one decision after another, and then you find yourself in this place that you never wanted to be in. Maybe it starts with, okay, I'm just going to like skip reading my Bible today or skip time over here. And before you know it, after a month, you haven't even checked out your Bible. Or you begin drifting away from God's people. Or you've been to one party after another, and before you know it, you have spent a whole semester partying. Or you've seen that guy multiple times a week, or you haven't been to church in months, or you can't even remember the last time you actually sat with the Lord. And before you know it, you're like, how did I get here? And you're struggling with things that you never thought you'd be struggling with before in your life. I remember one time I was helping, my mom lives out on the lake, and I was helping her put together this exercise bike that she had that she could go out in the water with. And so it's called an it bike, if you've ever heard of it. And so it's like a bike on a platform, and you put it together and you can go out on the water with it, and you basically like bike around the lake. It's kind of cool. So I'm helping her set it up, and I was like, okay, I will do a trial run before you get on it. And she's like, okay, that sounds good. Make sure to just stay close to the shoreline so that way if something happens, I can come get you. And I was like, okay, sure. So I like get on, and I'm already grooving. And so I'm like going and I'm pedaling. And so I was like, okay, I can go out a little bit more. And so before I know it, I get away from the shore a little bit and I start pedaling, and then it breaks. And so here I am on this little bike platform. It's broken, and I am headed out for the middle of the lake. And so like within minutes, I have drifted so far away from the shore. I'm in the middle of this body of water. All these boats are passing me, and the waves start coming. So now I am like getting wet from every side, and I'm not in a swimsuit. Like I'm in normal clothes, and I'm just stranded in the middle of the water. And so before I knew it, I'm completely away from the shore, and I am helpless. And that's what happens sometimes, even with our decisions. Before we know it, we're like, okay, I think I'm doing the right thing, or I think, this isn't too bad. But then we start drifting, and we find ourselves in the middle of this open water, helpless. And eventually my mom had to come back and get me, but here I was disobedient right off the bat. And I wasn't listening to stay close to the shore for her to easily come and get me. And so anytime we say no to God, we are running from him and the word that he has for us. We end up way offshore, so far from a place that we never thought that we would be in. And maybe you've been in a season like that before, or maybe you're living in one right now, but I'm sure each one of us could probably remember and experience a time that we went running, a time that we were disobedient. And the best thing that all of us can do when a moment like that happens, when we are running, is to turn back to him. Because when we are running from God, we're actually running towards destruction. Verse 4 says this, "Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God." Now, you know it's bad when the sailors, people who lived their life on the sea, they are now screaming for their life, and they are scared. That's a pretty crazy storm. And so here they are calling to their own gods, Muhammad, Buddha, whatever it may be, come and help us. And so they begin throwing cargo overseas, anything we can to help lighten our ship because we don't know if we're going to make it. But Jonah had gone below the deck, where he laid down and fell asleep in a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish." Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity." Casting lots is like a modern day Yahtzee or Farkle, but it was how Old Testament people basically would find out, okay, where is this coming from? And so you can pinpoint a person by casting lots. And so they casted lots and it fell on Jonah. So they're like, "Jonah, you are responsible for us. Who are you? Where are you from? Why is this happening? And what on earth did you do in order to have this happen?" And so Jonah begins to explain himself. He says, "Well, I'm a Hebrew. I came from this place." And he's like, "I actually serve a God who created the seas that we're on right now and the land and all these things." And they're like, "What have you done to make your God so mad at us?" And they're like, "What are we going to do?" And so Jonah, he just said, "Toss me overboard." Jonah's basically given up at this point. And he said, "Just toss me and give me over because I don't know what to do either." And the sailors began crying out to our God. And they begin to notice, okay, there's something about Jonah's God that's causing this to happen, and we are going to call on behalf to him. And so here Jonah's overboard, and all these things are happening. The seas begin to calm. What does running from God lead to? It leads to a lot of pain. It leads to a lot of destruction. And listen, that can be really hard to hear right now because maybe you're in the middle of a storm, but God may be allowing that storm so you don't run further, but you run back to him. See, that storm was crazy and it's heartbreaking and it's really hard to even read part of that and knowing that, okay, Jonah is tossed over, but this storm was also an act of mercy to Jonah because he didn't make it to Tarshish. He didn't make it through with the plan that he had for himself. Because God knew that thing that Jonah wanted so much that he was running towards was actually not the thing Jonah really needed for himself. And so that storm was to bring Jonah back to God. It wasn't "I'm out to get you" type of moment or "here's your punishment" or whatever, but it may have been keeping him from a destruction that he didn't know that he was going towards. And so there's times that God allows us to experience the natural consequences of our decisions. But this isn't a, "oh, gotcha" moment type of situation. You know, growing up in our kitchen, we had this really big stove. And so that was like always a rule I remember when I was little is don't touch the stove while it's hot, like while the eyes are like red. Because I always fascinated. It's like, oh, they get so bright red, right? And so that's a pretty normal rule maybe in your household. Don't touch the stove when it's red. And it's like, because you will get burned. And I remember one day my brother was making something and it was bright red. And I was like, you know what? I want to see what this is like. And so I went and I put my hand right on top of it and it burned my entire hand. Now, in that moment, I'm experiencing the natural consequence of my decision that I just burned my own hand, even though I was told beforehand, hey, this is something you shouldn't do. But that's here, Jonah's what he's experiencing is the natural consequences. Yes, this storm is happening, this crazy thing is happening, but what it was supposed to show me was, hey, this is actually supposed to draw you back to the Lord and the things that he has for you. And so Jonah choosing to run, it was God in his mercy that was stopping him to experience all the consequences of his decision. He didn't make it to tarnish. He didn't make out the plan that he had. And I can imagine even what Jonah was thinking, like, here, I'm going to run to this city. I will probably give my faith over, whatever it is. I'm going to go live away from everybody. I don't want to be compassionate to these people. I don't want to do the things that God has for me. But God stopped him. And he stopped him with a storm. C.S. Lewis says that God whispers to us in our pleasure, he speaks to us in our conscience, and he shouts in our pain. Is God shouting to you right now? Have you ever thought about that? That maybe something you're experiencing right now is the Lord shouting to you to come back to him. And I want to end by sharing the most beautiful piece of the story. And if you don't get anything else, please get this. God calls the runaways to himself. Think about that. Think about every piece in this entire story. God loved the Ninevites, the people who would go out and kill and murder other people. He loved them so much, he was willing to send a prophet to their city to call them back to himself. God loved the sailors so much. Even Jonah being around them, the sailors could see and recognize who God was, that he is calling them to himself. God called Jonah, even though he may not have been the best fit for the mission or got scared or fearful, God still chose him and God had mercy on him. God calls these runaways, these people who are running away from him, to himself. And you may be saying, okay, I've done a lot of things. There is no way that the Lord can use me. But God loves bad people. God loved all of these people, and he has gone through the greatest lengths to call you back to him. And this is the first thing that you're called to do. Anything else, your calling on your life is to be with God. It's to have a relationship with God and to live within. Start there. And maybe you have a relationship with God, but you aren't doing what you're actually called to do. And you may be saying, like, Scarlett, I don't actually know what I'm called to do, or how do I make sure that I know what I'm doing, what I'm called to do? And okay, so the first thing is you're called to have a relationship with the Lord and to love him with all your heart and your soul and your mind. And so are there things in your life that are pulling you from that relationship that you have from him? I listed off a lot of things earlier, and maybe even as I said that, you had one thing that come to mind. It's like, actually, I've been struggling with this for a long time. You have to get that right first. That's the first thing you're called to do, is to love God. Secondly, have you loved your neighbor today? Because we are called to the Lord, but now we're called to then go and share it with someone else. And share that love with a neighbor or a friend or a classmate or whoever it is, and go and make disciples of those people. When was the last time you shared something about God with someone else? That's what you're called to do. You're in Marble Falls for a reason, and the classes that you are for a reason, and the family that you are for a reason. And now it's time to go love on those people too. And so start there. You're called to love God, love others. And so the question that I want to leave with you is this. Is there an area of your life that you are running from God and what he has called you to do? What will it take for you to come back to him and what he has called of you? Have a good home group.